So today we have got this wonderful edition of Haven of Darkness by E.C. Tubb. It is number 16 of the Dumarest saga. But before we get into that, we're going to look at this lovely, lovely cover. I've seen a number of ones for number 16, and I think this is by far the prettiest. It's also in pretty good condition. You can see that the spine is quite faded, and it's got a couple of wrinkles, a couple of them from me because I've just finished it. And you can see that at some stage it's been on a shelf, it's been shoved in, and the binding is faded there, but not so much the cover. I really love this artwork. If it was a poster, I'd hang it up. You've got those floating islands, you've got the bad guy in the foreground, and that's a wraparound, so it continues onto the back where we've got some more otherworldly type geography and floating islands. There on the raft we've got a woman in an exceptionally unlikely costume. The only thing I really don't like that much about this artwork is the fact that she is completely off balance, and I don't know if you can see that, but she would appear to be balancing on her left leg while her center of balance is leaning on her right, which is in the air. I know that that's probably a very niche thing to worry about on a cover like this, but I can't help myself. Anyway, I'm really pleased with this edition. It's one of the most recent ones I've got. E.C. Tubb, Edwin Charles Tubb. He was an English author. I've always thought of his work as some of the pulpiest of the pulp, but having read a few of the Galaxy short stories recently, I really come to appreciate how good his writing overall was. He was the author of 140 novels, more than 200 short stories, and he had a monumental number of pseudonyms that he wrote under. Not pseudonyms, what's the word for it? That word that you use when you aliases. I think he had something like 40 or 50 of them. Some of them were house aliases and some of them were specific to genres, but E.C. Tubb wrote the Earl Dumarest saga under his own name. So I know it as the Dumarest saga. In America, I understand that it's called something else. Dumarest of Terror, I think. Earl of Terror, something like that. Anyway, 6 of one, half a dozen of another, right? Tomatoes, tomatoes. I first discovered the Dumarest saga in my teens. I got them out of order and randomly, though I do think The Winds of Gath, which I believe is the first book he wrote in the topic. Yep, it was 1967. That was, in fact, the first one I ever read, and I believe I still have fragments of the original copy. A few years ago, I decided to go on a mission to get all of the Dumarest saga and to read them in order. In this mission, I failed. I still don't have number 18, and I have never set my hot little hands on numbers 32 and 33. 33, incidentally, was written fairly recently, I think in the early 2000s, whereas Winds of Gath, the first one, was written in 1967. So you've got a series that spanned some 40 years. And yeah, let's give a bit of a background to it. So the whole thing is set in a far future galactic culture. It's fragmented, there's no central government, there's random governed stars and planets, each one of them settled in different means, different people, different cultures. Some of them have aliens, some of them don't. The uniqueness of the individual worlds is part of what I do really enjoy about the Dumarest saga. He doesn't go into extensive world building. We're talking about books from the 60s and 70s. This one is 173 pages long. That was kind of average. You don't get massive world building in that scope. But to me, E.C. Tubb's worlds are always quite individual. So our main protagonist, Earl Dumarest, is a true He-Man of legend. Women want him, men want to be him, etc., etc. He is cool, he is fast, he is an amazing fighter, he is so awesome, general awesomeness. And he is, I mean, he's great fun to read. He's one of the most stoic yet enjoyable protagonists of any long-lasting series I've met. So Earl Dumarest was born on Earth, but he stowed away as a young kid, and he sort of spaceship hopped closer and closer to the center of the galaxy, where the stars are denser and denser, and there's more and more spaceships. And he was discovered as a stowaway, as the captain who sort of took him under his wing. After traveling for many years, even decades, Dumarest wants to go home, but no one believes in Earth. It doesn't exist on any of the star maps. It doesn't exist in any of the libraries. Earth, like El Dorado and a few other worlds, is thought to be a myth. And no one in this future universe believes that humanity originated on one planet. It's just ridiculous, they say. How can such a diverse species have originated in one planet? Apparently in this future intergalactic culture, you don't have one single geneticist or one single biologist smart enough to realize that a species that can co-reproduce must have come from a single origin. But that's the quibble of the scientists of this era, not of 1967. So, as Earl tries to trace his way back home, there is an organization called the Psy-Clan. Their color is scarlet. They're humans that have surgically altered at a young age to become emotionless, and they are seeking a scientific discovery of the affinity twins that Dumarest possesses, and it was stolen from them, but they're not by him, and they will do anything to get it. In Haven of Darkness, I hadn't read one for a while, and it started a bit differently. So instead of starting with Earl Dumarest, we start with a sequence of a lady called Lavinia. She's out riding late on her planet, which is called Zachem. And she's nearly trapped outside. Curfew is declared on Zachem. No one can stay out after that. But one noteworthy element of this planet is delusion, in which you see people who aren't there, oftentimes people you knew who are dead, or just people who are absent, and they talk and interact as if they're real. So in the fairly short opening segment with Lavinia, Tubb takes the opportunity to establish quite a few world-building principles very fast and very efficiently about the limitations and the social structure of the world. The delusion that we learn about is what causes delusions, and it's got something to do with the fact that the two suns, a red sun and a violet sun, overlap, and that causes delusion. So Lavinia got caught out late. She's talking to a lover who's long dead and riding, and even though she knew he was long dead, she went along with the illusion, which seems funny to us at first until we realize that all the inhabitants of Zachem do believe that the delusion are a real thing, and even though they know that the people they're talking to are who they were when they knew them and nothing else, they do believe that it's a real thing. And Tubb, I realized early on in this one, really does like the notions of delusions, hallucinations, mind-altering elements, and he's used them quite a few times. In The Winds of Gath you get them, which is the first in the series. He's got several other ones where you've got these sort of delusions in different forms. In Haven of Darkness they're very effective. So we finished that opening sequence with Lavinia mourning, where on Zachem could she find a real man? Well, in the next segment we have Earl Dumarest, the ultimate of real men. At least in 1967, sci-fi verse. Yes. So it starts with him on a different world, and this sequence has him arriving on this other world whose name I've already forgotten. I think it's Harold or Harvard or something like that. And in his discussion with the official who's granting him entry to the world, Tubb once again establishes a lot of world building really fast. Different perspective. It's a heavily regulated world. It's a wealthy world. You can't actually go into it unless you've got high passage off deposited with the World Bank. And that goes into E.C. Tubb's central theme of traveling by spaceship. You can travel real time, which is us. We're traveling real time. or you get all these different drugs that will slow you down. So if you travel high, it means you travel alive, and you get these drugs injected to make the whole voyage pass really, really fast. So you may have to be months out, but it will just pass in a couple of days. Your body is actually moving faster. You need nutrients and supplements and things. It's a well worked out system, and I liked it. Because this is number 16, Dumarest is already slightly far advanced. In the earlier books, he had to travel low, which is basically in cryo sleep, which doesn't have terribly good odds for survival, but is much cheaper. So a lot of people traveling the galaxy have to take that option. It seems like that there's a huge class of travelers. It kind of reminds me of backpackers of my young days, but it wasn't quite as dangerous backpacking. So he's not traveling low, he's doing better for himself. He has enough money to travel high to this planet and enough money to deposit to go onto it. But Dumarest is on that planet purely to consult the library, which has a huge reputation of being able to find anything. He's achieved in one of the previous books a set of coordinates that he thinks that a computer bank with enough information might be able to use to point him in the direction of Earth. Unfortunately, the use of the library does not come cheap. He doesn't have quite enough money for it. He gets directed to someone else. Again, not quite enough money for that, but so he goes into an arena fight. Now, this is another standard Tubb ploy for Dumarest, who's incredibly fighty, amazing fighter. He can fight anyone, and he wins. And he always wins. It's usually with knives. So there's always a fight. In the early books, Dumarest is usually fighting because he needs money. In this one, he's also fighting because he needs money. In the later books, it starts to come into, there's always fight sequences, but these ones tend to be more Dumarest fighting to save himself or other people. So this has still got a lot of the light-heartedness of the early ones. It really does get a little bit more strained and desperate by the time you're in the high 20s. So Tubb, in the fighting scenes of the arenas, never fails to highlight the bloodlust in the spectators, which he's obviously got opinions about. Dumarest's cool capabilities, because he's the most amazing man in the world. The fact that the shedding of blood in the arena is sexually attractive to women. Dodgy, but it is the 60s. It is what it is, specific era. Now, it's not for everyone, and it has dated. So I think that some younger people who are used to more 2000s type sci-fi might struggle with these because they are pulpy. But I find them charming despite the formulaic element. I find the stereotyping quite acceptable and no worse than much modern stereotyping that goes on in series. And I don't find them flagrantly sexist. I did think of them as pulpy and somewhat sexist, but I've just finished a Galaxy Volume 2 collection of stories in which there was massive sexism that was often highly objectionable. So go EC Tubb, you did it well. Better than most. So as he's escaping so we're back in the library, in the arena, got the money, goes back to the guy who may be able to help him pinpoint the location of the star system. He's been killed, the Cyclan are close on his trail, and he can tell it. He manages to escape off the world, and that's when something that is, I don't know, is it a spoiler? Isn't it a spoiler? I mean, we're talking something from the 60s and 70s here. Maybe not. Maybe not a spoiler. But maybe if you haven't read the Dumarest and you're planning on it, maybe skip ahead a bit. So this one is unique in that Dumarest is actually caught by a member of the Cyclan. Normally, he isn't. Normally, he manages to escape them. This particular Cyclan is in the library world where he had been. He manages to catch him on the spaceship, which he is escaping from that world in. And Dumarest, there's a sequence where Dumarest has to escape from cuffs, and he has to use the Affinity Twin to do it. And even though I've read the whole series, I thought This book was actually a little bit unique in that I don't think this particular sequence has happened anywhere before. So yes, it's a little bit unique in the Dumarest saga, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. It really woke me up. I tend to pick up the Dumarest and go, ho hum, I know what's happening, I'm going to enjoy it, but I know what's going on. So once we hit the spaceship, I didn't know what was happening, and that was pretty neat. So, long story short, Earl Dumarest does end up in Zachem in a manner that I'm not going to tell you. He meets up with Lavinia, and they find out that another one of the lords who in council control the planet has got dire plans involving the guns on the ship that Dumarest arrived with. It's a completely peaceful world. There is no fighting, there aren't really guns, there's never been warfare, and it takes a man like Earl Dumarest to save them and show them how to get the bad guy out of the way. It's a pretty great book. There's a few surprises in there. There's the delusion, and Earl Dumarest's reaction to delusion and how it works is very thoroughly Mythbusters. But there's also one other interesting thing about this world. Again, I think it's a plot, narrative thing, design, whatever, that Tubb uses in a different book. The curfew. After dark, no one on Zachem can be outside, because when humans first arrived there, they found another intelligent species, and they made a pact with them. You can't stay out after dark, or you die horrible deaths or whatever. But no one has for such a long time that no one really knows. Dumarest is doubtful that there's anything except a myth to keep people in after dark, but he is wrong. And we find out how, in a tantalizing but never over-explained introduction to this other alien species. All in all, and it might be because I haven't read one recently, I found this a 100% satisfying book. I could criticize certain elements of it, but I'd be really reaching. I enjoyed it entirely. I had no quibbles or complaints with it while reading. It is what it is, but what it is an amazing piece of fun. It is thoroughly enjoyable. There are many more serious books that shouldn't take themselves as seriously and could only wish to be this good. Is it a great book? It'll never rival Dickens. But is it one of the better of the 70s era pulp sci-fi? I think so. I really do. So if you like 70s, I think this one was 1977, I think so. Pulp sci-fi, and you haven't read the Dumarest saga yet, I think get yourself out there, pick up The Winds of Gath. The Winds of Gath is everywhere, it's the easiest one to get, and work your way up to Haven of Darkness, and then come and tell me what you thought of it. I had a great time reading this. I'm actually a little bit worried that the next book is going to disappoint after this one. It was so completely satisfying. Like, comment, subscribe, all that other stuff. Have a great day. If you're in Australia, may none of the natural disasters we are currently enjoying be near you.